the City Council meeting of Monday, October 21st, 2019. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Albertson?
Here.
Bueller? Bueller. Hoyer?
Here.
Holeen? Lallam?
Here.
Manty? Absent. Rademski?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Why?
Present.
Thank you.
All right, the first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved, Mayor.
I have a motion by Bueller and a second by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 2 is public comment, and this is the time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. Seeing no one, we'll move on. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Vilhauer and second by Albertson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 4 is a special assessment role for weed cutting. And we'll have a public hearing and take action on this. I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Y. And I would ask Kristen to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor. This comes before the council every year at this time. So this is the weed cutting that the street department has done throughout the year. The property owners are billed as it's happening, and then this is with the accumulation of any finance charges that are on it. At this time, once this is approved, the property owners will have until October 31st to come into the finance office and pay it. If at that time it isn't paid here, then it's turned over to the county and will be part of their property taxes for next year. If there's any other questions, I can answer them.
All right, thank you. I think I'll open the public hearing and see if anybody is here to speak about this. If there's anyone here, please come forward at this time. See no one, I will close the public hearing and open it for council discussion. Councilman Lallam?
Thank you. Kristen, this will just be a tax lien then at that point then?
Yeah, it's a weed cutting assessment, so it's an assessment, but it does go on to the property taxes.
Yeah, so it'd be a lien, and then after a certain amount of time, if they don't pay it, then they actually could lose the property, correct?
I think this isn't quite like that. This is, Matt, do you want to help me out on how this one works?
In what respect?
If they don't pay it, then,
Yeah,
It's
it
not-
kind of, it remains on the property. It doesn't carry the same weight as a tax lien.
yeah.
It can't be foreclosed upon, but it does remain on the property.
So they cannot transfer or sell without that being paid,
Correct.
correct?
Oh.
Correct. But a foreclosure does wipe out the lien.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Lallam, or Vilhauer?
Kristen, is this list, I remember from year to year, about the same length, some of the same people, any changes? Because I know we've had some long conversations about this in the past, about making this to the point that it hurts, so we whittle this down. Any comments about where we are compared to prior years?
It's a little bit larger than it has been in the past, and there are also some repeat people on this. There are a couple of properties on here that are pretty consistent every year on here.
Did we change anything from last year as far as the amounts?
I don't believe so. I think we felt that that was pretty sufficient where it was at. I know Rob had done some looking into it, but I don't think he increased it yet. I do know that it's kind of being considered if it should. And I think too, he'd like maybe a little bit of direction. That's another thing. Our fee resolution does come before the council, I think, end of November. So that is an opportunity to really look at that if you want to increase those fees at that time.
Okay, good idea. Thank you.
Yes, and I think the same thing probably goes with snow removal. If we want to look at that at the same time.
Yep.
So note to self, Heath,
Absolutely. To Councilman Vilhauer's point, just a little side story here because it's directly related to what you asked. In my previous place of employment, they actually received a thank you letter from one of the business owners or citizens that we were performing annual mowing duties on because it was cheaper than them hiring somebody
Oh,
to do
no,
it.
we don't want to be that. We don't want to do
So
that.
I think your comment to appropriately price these fees should sting a little, so it's not something they'd fall back to and defer to, as so they would want it done by us instead of somebody else.
Right. Councilman Y?
That was just mine. I know we had discussed, that was my thought. We had discussed this before about raising these rates, and I think we need to revisit that and possibly increase them.
Okay.
So I'd like to see that brought back up.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments by the council? Councilman Lallam?
Kristen, I'd like to know, maybe for next year, if there are repeat offenders, if it's the same property and things like that, just for our own information.
Okay, I can provide that, yeah. Next, I don't have it offhand, but I do know by looking at it that I can tell there's a couple on here
Okay,
that are, so.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Not, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 5 is approval of airport ground lease with Jeremy Price and Joni Beekler Price. And there will be a public hearing for this as well. Have a motion by Lallam and a second by Radomski. And I would like Matt to tell us about this before we open the public hearing.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a airport ground lease that was, there was a notice, resolution of intent that was brought forward at the last council meeting, setting the public hearing for this council meeting. It is a, let me pull it up here. 3,600 square feet, I believe. 3,600 square feet, private hangar, ground lease. And it's on the same terms and conditions as the previous ground leases that we've recently approved, 25 years with a 10-year renewal.
Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak about this item? If so, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Councilman Lallam?
Matt, is this the last property, or?
I was not able to attend the last airport board meeting, but it's my understanding, and Reed, I believe, was there. I believe there's one space left under
There is one left.
under our current configuration, but they, I think that the engineers are potentially looking at some additional ground that we could utilize for ground leases, but Reed maybe knows a little more.
Matt had a good memory. Yeah, this is the next to last one available, and they are already working on new spots for hangars.
And along those lines, Mayor, if I may, Todd Sire, airport manager, did inform me that we do have a few of the existing hangars under the city's ownership that are becoming available as well. So there's a little bit of shuffle going on that way where some of those spaces may be becoming vacant and available too, so.
All right. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 6 is approval of resolution number 19-45, a vacation of a public drainage easement located in Lot 3 of the plat entitled Calvin Industrial Park, First Edition, to the municipality of Watertown, Cottington County, South Dakota. I have a motion by Lallam. Second by Vilhauer, and I'd like Heath to tell us about this, please.
Absolutely, thank you, Mayor. This is a drainage easement vacate request that comes to us from the Watertown Development Company. They are the owner of Lot 3, Calvin Industrial Park, First Edition. And that property, as you may or may not be aware, is being developed currently by Eastside Implement. And as Eastside Implement's plans came in, they realized that the original plat for this property had encumbered their land quite a bit with a drainage easement. When the plat was filed not too long ago, it was probably only a few months ago that we filed this plat. And it had a drainage easement in the southeast corner of that lot due to the natural drainage channel that exists and the conveyance of the surface waters that would have to flow through that direction and be preserved throughout the development of this lot. So the consultant came back with a new hydraulic analysis and data to the engineer's office, and Austin Engineering provided the recalculation of the right sizing, I would call it, of this easement. It was a prior consultant that had originally placed the easement on the original plat, and through communications with both of those consultant engineers and through the review of the hydraulic data that Austin presented for the revised easement, the city engineering office was comfortable with where they've relocated the new easement limits to, so that it can adequately convey the 100-year flows through that drainage way. And I know that Brandy, the urban planner, and Colin Paulson, the assistant city engineer, helped review this in detail, and we help answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this issue? If so, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and look for council questions, comments. Anybody have any questions? All right, then we'll have some action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is the first reading of ordinance number 19-13, a zoning text amendment to Title 21 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown, amending chapters 21.1003.1, non-residential height and placement regulations. And there's no action, it's just the first reading. Heath, would you please tell us about this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance amendment pertains to the section of our zoning ordinance specific to the C1 Community Commercial District. And within that C1 zoning district, we outline certain criteria, including the minimum lot area. And there's a chart in that section of the ordinance, and the C1 is required currently to have at least 10,000 square foot of lot area. Now, the C1, as most of you know, is the downtown commercial district, otherwise known as the downtown commercial district. You would also maybe be familiar with the fact that it's hard to accomplish that 10,000 square foot minimum lot size for any lot in the downtown area. So what we've run into in the recent past is with some recent redevelopment, people demoing older buildings, want to put new buildings on. In order to follow our regulation, upon demolition of that site, they're then required to come back with a lot that's conforming before we can issue a building permit. And of course, a lot of these lots are not conforming. So that opened the discussion of whether we need to have that high of a square footage requirement in this district. Now, granted, this district does span outside just the downtown area, and there are a few other locations in town that this would also extend to, but those are fairly limited. So I think that this amendment was primarily targeted to address a downtown issue, and staff doesn't foresee a huge issue with that in those outlying areas that are also zoned C1. But what's proposed here in first reading and what's passed the Planning Commission is that we go to a minimum lot frontage of 25 feet and would equate also to a minimum lot area of 625 square feet. And again, our urban planner, Brandy Hanton, is here. I believe there she is. If you have any further questions, her and I would be glad to help answer them.
I have a question. Are there any properties that would not meet that tiny little requirement, 625 square feet? Ooh, she's saying yes.
There are 2. Out of the 200 properties, there's like 204 properties downtown, and there's 2 that wouldn't, but they are still just parcels. There's one that Municipal Utilities owns just over by County Fair, that little pump house.
Okay.
And then there's one in an alley, so it doesn't even have frontage to a street.
Okay.
So.
And what's the one in the alley? What size? How many square feet?
Ooh, I think like 450.
Okay.
So it would have to be added on to, if they were going to plat it, they would have to add that onto another parcel, existing parcel, especially so they could get street frontage, so they can meet that 25-foot minimum requirement.
So there's over 100 parcels right now that are non-compliant.
Yeah, so 64% of the parcels, and not even platted lots, if they want to get a building permit, are not in compliance with the 10,000 square foot.
So going down to 2,
Yeah,
that's a positive change.
yep, a lot
Yes.
less variance requests.
Yes, thank you. Does anybody, okay, Councilman Hoyer?
Just 2 questions. How does this play with the new overlay district? And then it's saying that the proposed minimum was derived for a potential 25 by 25 corner lot. Where's that located that they're looking at?
So it actually wasn't, for the first question, they are related somewhat, but kind of separate issues, but just basically in looking at any redevelopment downtown, that this is something that would come into play too, and then trying to have orderly development and platting requirements, that they could actually meet what's existing, that those could actually come and be redeveloped and meet our requirements. And then as far as there is no proposal for a 25 by 25 foot corner lot, but it would just be, that would be the minimum. The 625 square feet comes from there being a 25 by 25 foot lot and on the corner, so that could meet that our requirements that we're putting forward.
Okay, but the overlay district will still just be in effect, still all the same rules, everything. It's just,
Yep,
all right, perfect. Thank you.
yep.
Our table says minimum required side yard 0 or 30 feet adjacent to R. Can you tell us what that means?
Yep, so that's adjacent to residential. So if there's any of the C1 community commercial district that abuts residential, residentially zoned lots, then they would have to have a side yard setback to just create some transition.
But we can pack them like sardines in the heart of the sea for the edges that abut residential.
Yep,
That's good.
Madam
Other-
Mayor, I'm sorry, what was that setback for the,
30 side setback?
so that would almost have to be amended too as well, correct?
No, it's 0 if it's in the commercial. 0 or 30. Or 30 if it's next to
But if you have a
residential.
25-foot lot frontage minimum and you are next to a residential lot, there's no way you would meet the
You can't build
setback
on it.
requirement.
It's not
Exactly.
buildable. But,
Something that didn't come up is why I asked that.
Yeah,
It
they
slipped
would-
through
they
staff.
would
and-
struggle to get a building
Yeah,
permit.
yeah. Okay.
and hopefully in their circumstance that they would have more than the minimum where they could meet that, but yeah, it would make issues. That's
Right, and we probably do have, right now, 25-foot wide lots adjacent to residential with a 30-foot setback. So in planning new things, this isn't, that part of it's been on our books for who knows how long. If we were doing new plats downtown, we would take that into consideration. Councilman Holeen?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be clear, I want to know what will happen to the property in the alleyway that is going to be non-compliant under this adoption.
well, and so it still exists. So all of these subdivisions happened without platting, so there was no orderly development. So at some point, it was parceled off and just exists there now as a small lot in the alley. I mean, I think it was like 450 square feet. So if at the time, if they would ever want to redevelop that, I don't know what exactly they could do with that space, but they would have to probably look into joining in with an adjacent property to meet the requirements.
For new development.
Yep, yeah.
So the existing buildings, we don't, I mean, that's probably, was an existing building before they parceled it off.
Well, and it's actually just a parking lot.
Oh,
So it's I don't know if I should have actually looked to see if there was an adjacent if they owned an adjacent property and for some reason that was parceled off. But it won't, so this coming into effect will not affect existing properties. It'll just be upon redevelopment or if they wish to get a building permit and plat.
okay. Other questions or comments? Councilman Bueller?
No, I think just for clarification too, I think that if there was a property that wasn't in conformance with this, if there was a structure that would remain, it would be grandfathered in unless there was something that needed to be changed on that structure. If they wanted to add to it, then it would have to go through Board of Adjustments for a variance.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. Good point.
All right. Anything else? Thank you, Brandy.
Thank
All right,
you all.
we'll move on. Item number 8 is approval of the issuance of a certificate of completion for the development improvements of Prairie View Addition, Cherry Drive Northeast, 27th Street Northeast, and 13th Avenue Northeast, installed on behalf of the developer Midwest Business Condos, LLC. Have a motion by Lallam and a second by Rademski. And Heath, will you tell us about this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If I could have IT put the map that's on the attachments there for me on the screen. It kind of helps give an overview of the public improvements that we're talking about here this evening. So this action before the council tonight is to, excuse me, it's the city's issuance of a certificate of completion for development improvements up in the Prairie View Addition. And generally speaking, it includes the roadways of Cherry Drive Northeast, 27th Street Northeast, and 13th Avenue Northeast. And the other improvements that are pertaining to this completion certificate include the sanitary sewer system, the storm sewer improvements, and then all the street improvements related to those streets that I listed off. Those street improvements include not only the asphalt surfacing, but the base course beneath it, the curb and gutter adjacent to it, and then also there's some sidewalk and sidewalk ramps on the corners, street corners, that are also installed as development improvements. This is the first step of 3 that I would say in closing out a development project. Once the work is complete and deemed substantially done and there's nothing left to be done, the developer calls the city engineering office for a final inspection of their work. We go out and perform that inspection, make any punch list of items that need to be corrected or repaired or fixed. They address those issues, and then we bring this certificate forward to the council to issue a certificate of completion. Once council takes action on that certificate of completion, that initiates the 1-year warranty that the developer gives us for these public improvements. So that would effectively, the warranty would expire this date, October 21st of 2020, if it's approved tonight. Upon the expiration of that warranty, we do another warranty walkthrough before it expires, and then come back to the council with an acceptance resolution, and that would then formally transfer those improvements to the city in perpetuity for ownership and maintenance. So all that being said, this it's one of the formalities that's outlined in our city ordinance and our subdivision regulations as far as the closeout process that we're trying hard to adhere to and follow through with, and not as an extra rule for the developer to have to check off, but really a safeguard for both the developer and the city. This helps, it's the next step to help get these improvements off the developer's books and onto the city's books, and helps them put closure to this construction process that they've been through and built out to accommodate this residential subdivision. So it is a helpful formality in those respects that we wanted to make sure it's implemented and followed through with as it's called out in our ordinance. All that being said, we'd love to help answer any questions. The map is on the screen, and there's some extensive the street and storm sewer work that was recently done. If there's any questions on that, we'd be glad to help answer them.
All right. Do you have any? You get first dibs if you want it.
Me?
Councilman Roby?
I brought up Cherry Drive a couple of times. How does this affect, that was a joke, how does this affect the drainage going down south there? I mean, does this have any bearing on that at this point?
This storm sewer system that we're accepting does contribute flows to that same drainage system that we've been discussing for the last several months. And the flows from this, not only from this subdivision and these street improvements and these rooftops and these developed areas that will increase runoff, not only those flows will be coming through here, but there's a larger contributory basin that also flows through here. But one of the things due to our previous discussions related to that channel specifically, that we had the consultant do was model that whole sub-basin and make sure that that channel can adequately convey not only these flows that we'd be accepting here tonight, but the subsequent flows that could be coming, that would be coming as well through this neighborhood and into these storm sewer systems. And it did show adequate capacity in that channel for those flows to be accommodated. So from an engineering standpoint, the water that's hitting this area that'll be going through there, it was shown by the consultant engineer to be adequately conveyed through that channel.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Very appreciative of your presentation at the committee meeting earlier about the development process. So as I look at the development process here, we're going to issue this certificate, so there's a year. There's a year going forward from the dates that's signed, that if we have trouble with that road, what do you do?
So within that year, what staff and I have done, we put out a 10-month reminder on our calendars anytime we execute one of these documents. So in 10 months, we'll get a reminder, and we'll reach out to the developer and their consultant engineer. Mainly those two parties are typically who's involved, to meet with us on site and do a warranty walkthrough. Now that warranty walkthrough looks at the street paving conditions, the curb and gutter, whether any settlements occurred, the inlets, the manholes, the sanitary sewer system, the storm sewer system, make sure that there aren't any obvious defects that need to be addressed that we would call warranty work. Now there's an occasional plow scraping of the curb and things like that that might happen that we don't obviously put on the responsibility of the developer. But we talk through those things and assess the whole site and all the improvements that were part of the original approved construction plans. So again, it circles all the way back to the beginning of the process, and if we follow it systematically, it really flows well. If we defer back to the original approved construction plans and look at how everything was put in and make sure everything's still in that same condition that we expected it to be, we then bring forth that certificate or that resolution of acceptance for the council.
Councilman Hoyer?
I'm just curious, Heath, and forgive me, I'm not an engineer, but how long does it typically take to see the integrity of the road and its potential to erode? I just know that to the southwest here, in this little development down off Cherry, and then you go a little bit south of that, those are some of the roughest roads I've seen in town, and I'm just kind of curious the extra steps maybe that we might be looking at taking in this specific area of town to maybe ensure the success of these roads so that we're not footing a big bill down the road when we could have caught it up front.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Councilman Hoyer. So on the front side, I wasn't here and I can't speak to the review of the plans and the specifics to what went into like the street section design, for instance. But typically that's where those issues would be addressed, is in the design phase. If you know you've got high groundwater and you know you've got issues with your guys going to have a saturated subsurface below your pavement, we all know that that's going to dramatically decrease the lifespan of that pavement. So we'd want to put in the appropriate measures to help prevent that from happening, such as edge drain, which is a drain tile along the back of the curb, or a thicker section of base course to help keep that water down and out and away from the pavement. But there's ways to mitigate that stuff through the design phase. Now, whether all that was executed and followed through here, I can't speak to, but that is one way to front those concerns on future subdivisions. This one, I'm afraid, we're bound to the terms of what we've got in front of us with the ordinance and the one-year warranty. I can tell you that the intent behind that one-year warranty is to catch some of the quick and dirty work. If there was some trench backfill that occurred and they didn't do it in the proper lifts and the trench was hogged in and then they paved over it, that stuff is going to show within a year's time, presumably. That year warranty is really meant to kind of target those kind of things, any kind of dramatic settlement in the curb and gutter where you lose your clean flow line of the storm water that hits the curb and gutter. And creates bird baths and things like that people don't like in front of their house. Those are the things that year warranty is really meant to address. Now, if we do run into pavement issues and premature failure like we've seen in some of our subdivisions that have happened 5 to 10 to 15 years out, which is way premature according to what they're designed to be, those I'm afraid are outside the realm of any warranty or obligation that the developer's bound to provide to us. And that's why we hope to front it on the address those things on the front end and make sure that we're vetting that design process very thoroughly and making sure that things are accounted for and then followed through and constructed to meet those design parameters.
Right. I'm just curious if there's any, looking back, maybe we can take a look at the plans, kind of see how they were made. I mean, this is one of those rare examples where you can just literally see the moisture in the southeast of that image just sitting there, even on a satellite image. So if we can look at that ahead of time and kind of maybe project that we might have some issues down the road, maybe that could be beneficial to us as a council or as a community. Otherwise, I mean, we just got to write it out as it is, right? But thank you for your input on it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? None, then I will look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 9 is request by the Chamber of Commerce for the City Council to permit the consumption of alcohol at the Watertown Regional Library on December 5th, 2019 from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. for a Chamber After 4 event. And look for motion by Y and a second by Lallam. And I see our library director, Dee Dee, is here. Do you want to tell us about that, please?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. We are looking to host the Chamber After 4 on Thursday, December 5th. And we're really excited about it because, as many of you may know, we host an event for the Watertown Community Foundation every year. It's their Christmas tree fundraiser, and 15 organizations, including the library, will have decorated Christmas trees that the community can come in and place a vote for $1. So I'm going to invite everybody to come in between December 1st and 31st and place your vote for your favorite organization, the library. But also other organizations. There are many worthy organizations every year. I was just looking at the list, and I can't remember a thing. So, but we'll have all of the organizations' names on our Facebook, on other advertising around the community. And so we're hoping that this event will be a nice way for people to come in and see all the trees and support the organizations. And I know that the Community Foundation is excited about it as well.
I have to say, you have some pretty creative people on your staff, and I've seen some awesome library trees, but there's a lot of competition.
There are. We've had some really fun trees. The only thing we've asked in the last couple years is that organizations stop using glitter, which kind of hurts my heart because I love glitter. but it does make a little bit of a mess around the library. But some of the organizations just came to mind are PAC. I think Area Transit maybe this year, the Salvation Army, the Beacon Center.
They limit it, right?
They do. There are a lot of organizations that are interested, and so they now do a drawing every year. So they ask for any organization that's interested to let them know, and then they pull a name out of a hat, basically. So.
Right. Councilman Lallam?
No, just to refresh my memory, whatever they bid on, that goes towards the organization, correct?
Yes, I can explain that really quickly too. So it's $1 per vote, and we collect those and then get them over to the Community Foundation. And any organization that reaches $300 in fundraising gets a match from the Community Foundation, and then there is a competition. So the first place winner gets an additional $500 in matching funds from the foundation. So some of the organizations are not as well known as others, or their fundraising efforts are not as robust as others. And we've had some donors come in and just say, hey, which organization hasn't reached their 300? And then they help everyone get there. So that's really generous for people who come in and do things like that, because they're all organizations that are really impactful in the community.
Great. Councilman Roby?
I'll have to recuse myself from this one.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you much.
Dee Dee.
Thank you. I hope you come out on the 5th as well.
So item number 10 is old business, and I will save Dan from having to ask me if there's an update on the ice arena. And unfortunately, I don't have anything new to report, but I want to reassure people that there's a lot of option exploring going on, and the council is really looking at everything right now. So stay tuned. Is there any other old business? Councilman Roby.
Heath, any update, Cherry Creek?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Roby. Cherry Creek, as I mentioned at the last meeting, in your absence, Councilman Roby, we did find out that the wetland is delineated as what they call a linear wetland. And that gives us some flexibility to be able to regrade the alignment of that linear wetland, which is good news, because that's obviously our goal here. I also touched on the fact that the next step is to put together a grading plan to submit to the Corps of Engineers for their review and approval. And that is something that we're working on right now, and actually working on with the developer to the north, consultant engineer, who has already designed a realignment of our channel in conjunction with the grading of the development to the north. So we're hoping to gain some economy of scale there with potentially having the same contractor do the grading for the developer's property along with the regrading of this channel. Unfortunately, the one down note here is that, you know, given the season that we're in right now and the time to get approval from the Corps of Engineer, it's likely these improvements won't occur till next year. That is the one downside. Now, I need to continue to work with our city attorney and the developer and their consultant and potentially put together some kind of a joint agreement on how this grading would work out. And that's one of the next steps we have to do as well, so we can hopefully partner it together and not have two contractors out there bumping into each other trying to grade property separately. So.
All right, thank you. Councilman Lallam?
I'll have you know, Don, I asked that in your absence just because you were gone.
Any other old business? Councilman Vilhauer?
I'll direct this to Heath also. Anything to report? It's been a couple months now on the 21st Street Bike Path project out there. Anything from the FAA that we've received in the meantime?
We have had communications with the FAA recently. The main issue at hand is this plat that's been pending their approval. Depending on how that plat is processed, it is construed or looked at or is a land giveaway of airport property. If we plat it as right-of-way, we're giving away airport property to the public as right-of-way. That is a huge concern of the FAA's. I shouldn't say huge concern, but there's a very formal, lengthy process we have to go through in order to accomplish that. So we're trying to brainstorm ways to accomplish the same thing without having to go through the land. It's not a giveaway. I forget the term that's used, but the release, the land release of the airport property. We're trying to avoid those processes because they take even more months to accomplish with environmental impact analysis and things like that. So some of those other options we've kicked around with the FAA include platting easements. You know, maybe we can have access easements in lieu of rights of way, or platted H lots, which is a lot that's used in plats frequently for highway use and roadway use. So there's things like that we're trying to explore and trying to find the most efficient way to accomplish this. So those discussions are still active, but we have had recent discussions with them and kind of moved the ball a little bit in the right direction, I can say. So at least we all are on the same page and know which direction we're going in.
I don't want to try to put you in a spot, but are you cautiously optimistic that by next spring we'd have have the issues resolved, that we could move forward then next summer with construction out there?
I would certainly hope so. I think that, you know, that's a goal of mine personally, just to see it done that soon. I think this is obviously held out plenty long, and in hindsight, and I wasn't aware of all the details behind the replatting and what the function was behind that, but in hindsight, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, and maybe the trail would have been best left where it was until this plat was processed. So I do acknowledge that, and I apologize for the trail being removed prior to that plat approval, but we are working through the best options that we can and trying to happen as soon as we can.
Okay, thanks, Hank.
Any other old business? Is there any new business? Councilman Lallam.
Heath, I was out at the gun range here on Saturday. Couple things. Looks like some of the pistol range, those mats are starting to see some holes in there. I don't know if you can have someone take a look at that. And just a general note to the public to please keep it clean. I mean, it's not too bad, but a lot of brass and stuff sitting around. So if you're out there shooting, please try to keep it cleaned up so it looks nice so everyone else has a chance. Although I didn't, good news is I didn't see, targets and stuff sitting around. There was a lot of garbage. So just a lot of brass, which let's keep it clean for that portion.
Right, we'd like to keep that open and free. But
There was a lot of people.
if it ends up being a maintenance issue, or if people are vandalizing, or, just, we can put a gate across it and restrict access to it to certain hours, and we don't want to go there if we don't have to.
And like as far as the mats go, those weren't a vandalization. I think it's just they're getting used a lot,
Overuse,
so
yeah.
which is a good thing. But we just got to keep an eye on that and make sure that we're following up.
And to that point, Councilman Lallam, I spoke with the acting Parks Director, Park and Recreation Director, Terry Kelly, recently. They're the ones that actually performed the change out of those mats, and he was telling me about the sheer number that they've gone through already, which is good. I mean, it's great the facility's getting used. That's obviously why it was built. So I'll definitely bring this to his attention as well and pass that on. And of course, the Streets Division help with the Parks Department on the maintenance of that facility by grading the roadway and things like that too. So.
Yeah, it looked good. I mean, the roads are good, and it was relatively clean. I would just say there's a lot of brass sitting around, which if you don't reuse it, put it in the buckets, because a lot of people do reload and they can use it. So, but yeah, it's just there's a lot of people out there using, especially as hunting season is approaching. There'll be more people out there, so it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a concern from a constituent that I have, and I did talk to Rob Bainan earlier today about this. It's a pothole issue. I don't know if any of you folks have any of those issues in your wards. No?
Just yours.
Just mine, I guess. Anyway, between 6th and 7th Avenue South, the alley going north, and I understand alleys are kind of a secondary fix, after we're going to the higher traffic thoroughfares and so forth. But I did actually take a drive over there. I've had a couple of requests to see if there's something we could do with. There's probably 6-8 potholes that are,
Which
Yeah.
100 block?
I'm kind of glad I had my pickup. I'll just tell you that. It's between 6th and 7th on Kemp Avenue. Pardon me, and it's alley north of Kemp. Did I say Avenue? Yeah, Kemp Avenue, but 6th and 7th Street. Yes.
Yeah. East.
Bruce?
So anyway, if we get an opportunity, perhaps we could see if we can do something with that.
Thank you, Councilman Bueller. And also along those lines, I'll take the opportunity that the Street Department also, the Street Division of Public Works also recently issued a public notice regarding the cease of any street cuts, which they typically do this time of year. So effective, I think he put in there October 25th. We requested that people discontinue any cutting of the streets just because the availability of asphalt to patch them back in to get through the winter months becomes next to obsolete pretty soon here.
You only have a few weeks, is my understanding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but we'll try to get these addressed too, and we've got a list that Rob's working on of areas like that need addressed before the hard winter months hit.
Thank you, Heath.
All right. Councilman Hoyer.
Quick question. Bruce, is this the one that's east of County Fair, kind of over by the post office in between the plaza and then that set of buildings?
No,
Okay, because
towards Kranzberg.
we'll toss this one out there too then. So the alley that's right by the post office there, behind the plaza, behind the senior center, and then the building that's just to the north there, that one's got some grave diggers too. Like I have to go around them 100%. I had a constituent bring it up as well. And that's just right in downtown too. But it gets a lot of heavy traffic from folks headed towards the post office sometimes, but you really do have to go around it. Otherwise, I think you could fit a tire in it and just get completely stuck. It's pretty vicious.
Thank you.
All right. Councilman Lallam.
just not to pile on that, I did talk to Rob on a couple other ones. So,
ahead and pile on.
they're aware of them. There's some of them that they're not aware of. So I made sure to tell them there's a couple that with that rain that we had last week and a little bit colder, it's pushing the gravel that's in there up. So just let the street department know so that they can mark them down. But he did say the same thing. The patch crew is working as fast as they can, but you don't know how long they're going to be able to get hot patch. So
Right.
let them know.
Yep, any other? Are we on new? Is this new business? Any other new business? Any liaison reports? None? All right, item 13 is executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2. And we will be having the need to go into executive session to consult and discuss with our legal counsel on contract negotiations. And we do expect to take action when we come out. So I have a motion by Lallam. Second by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify